Hey Frank, I wanted to thank you for tagging me in that post about the doctor loan program. I
Got
appreciate it.
that?
I
Yeah,
I reached out to her and she's called me and I've called her back. So hopefully I'm going to hook up with her today.
excellent. Yeah, she's super nice. So that's a great program. Not too many people offer that.
Good deal. Thank you
Yeah,
again.
of course, my pleasure. Should probably jump on and just start by saying good morning to everybody. I know Rob's going to be on in about 30 seconds, but I just wanted to give an update on the Fed's decision to hold rates this time. You know, they've cut 75 basis points last year, and they decided to hold interest rates steady rather than cut them. And the main reason is that the economy is still performing relatively well. Inflation has come down, but it remains above their 2% rate. So cutting the rates too early could risk slowing the progress on inflation. So Powell emphasized that the Fed they're staying data driven. They want more consistent proof that the inflation is moving down in a sustainable way before making any policy changes. So their stance right now is cautious and patient. You know, they're balancing the risk of easing too soon against the risk of keeping rates high for too long. So holding steady gives them the flexibility, you know, while they watch the next round of the economic data. So they're looking at economic data versus, you know, just political pressure or whatever. So the bottom line is they're not ruling out rate cuts just yet. They just want more data to show that they have to cut the rates. But rates are still low. I mean, you know, we know that it goes up and down at any given week. The average right now, I think Freddie Mac is at 6.1%. But again, it's all driven on credit score, down payment, and so forth. And the government loans are in the fives. So rates are still relatively low. So just wanted to give an update on the market and just keep everybody up to date. So the next Fed meeting is, I think, March 17th and 18th. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, and you know, we'll keep you posted on a daily basis. So that's it. Everybody have a great weekend.
All right. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday, Rob.
Today I wanted to talk about, my perception of how we can reinvent the whole buying process. All right. Does anybody feel, if you've been in the business for over 20 years and you feel the buying process hasn't changed much, maybe just unmute yourself for just a minute. 20 years in the business and you feel it's been stale. Anybody? Ivy. Ivy's the first one. So Ivy, what's your observation over 20 years on what we do for buyers and how it's changed or hasn't?
Oh, dramatically. You know, in Texas, we had sub-agency and we didn't, you know, our buyer brokerage came about. So that was a huge change. People, you know, resisted it, and now it's the only way to really represent a buyer. And I think for me, my observation of the market, I think it's every 5 years. You know, the market goes up and the market comes down. The market goes up and the market comes down. And I think history repeats itself.
So Ivy, I'm kind of looking at it more like from a structural prospect and, somebody, with the difference being, people don't come to the office like they used to have maybe an initial consultation. But
No,
I think that the value matrix that we've been delivering is probably very similar, even since we were using the books before computers,
yeah.
into how we worked with buyers. And I just want to kind of tip it on its head and see if there's different things that we could do to A, differentiate ourselves, and B, establish a greater value proposition for the buyers. In other
Well,
words, in other words, like, the
well,
process of showing people houses, Ivy, like you go around, now maybe they don't go in your car as much. That's different, but that's not really a significant difference in the whole procedural.
well, you know, agents don't even shuttle buyers around. They meet them at houses today, and buyers find their own houses. So they're going to the internet, and buyers think they know more than we do, as do sellers. So I think your value proposition is a lot stronger today than it's been in the past because They feel they don't need us as much as they used to need us. And we really, your value proposition is the key to your success.
So if I'm a buyer, coming to, a typical agent in your Dallas office there, Premier, um, tell me, like, I meet at 3 houses, 5 houses, 7 houses. How does an agent typically manage that now, Ivy? And I'm not going to make this very boring. I just want to go through a point.
Okay, the point is that the buyers know where they want to live just about most of the time, unless they're from another state. They know the areas, they know where they want, and they're very familiar with what's going on.
Okay,
So,
I'm not asking the question clearly. I apologize, but like when I go out there, you meet me at 5 different houses, right? Is it 3, 5, 7? What's typical, Ivy?
5 to 7 houses.
Okay, so let's just say I meet at 5 houses instead of meeting at the office, me driving you around. We meet at the properties. That's one distinction, but not uniqueness in the change. After you review the 5 particular properties, a big difference is you used to go back to the office and say, "What do you think about it?" A lot of times they just dissipate, correct?
Mhm.
Right? They leave the last one and you don't sit down and go over it, or does an agent typically do that? Give me some insight.
Well, I think you have to know which house. So if you're showing 5 houses, you have to narrow it down to two. And then when you get it narrowed down to two, you have to really go with them to do the Benjamin Franklin, as I call it, the good and the bad of each house, to help them determine their wants versus their needs.
Right, and this will be my last question, then I'll let you off the hook, Ivy. But do you have that conversation in the fifth house, or do you have that conversation by phone the next day? Like, what do you envision
I think
occurs?
you have to have that conversation in each house, in my opinion, because
Okay,
you have
well,
to know and feel what they need.
yeah, I think I know that you're understanding the houses, but I don't know that you're having that concluding conversation. But I want to thank you for sharing that. I'm going to maybe take one other volunteer. Anybody else want to? Brian, Vicky, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Okay. The day before the ice storm here, I had this lady in my neighborhood call me and she wanted to see 3 houses. Well, I just put her in a lease house for a year. And I said, okay, we'll go see these 2 houses. I showed it to her. I knew what she was liking. And then she calls me the next day and she said, I want to buy the house number 2. That's how it went.
Okay.
And I got her under contract during the snow and the ice here. We did it all online. And now she's on a trip. She's traveling the next 7 days, so we've got to handle the option period.
So Vicky, I think it's because of your experience and your demeanor that you're able to pull off these outliers, which probably don't work for most of us. You show somebody 2 and they win. But I want to.
My last 3 houses have been that way.
All right. Next week you're going to do the mastermind.
Okay.
No, but
Yeah, but see, I pick
I-
who I want to work with. I don't work with everybody. I'm not gonna take the guy off the street because he's a waste of time.
I think how many years have you done this, Vicky?
Almost 40.
So you've really developed your instincts, and you could probably tell somebody when you talk to them for 15 minutes if they're real or not.
Yeah.
Many of us on the call haven't developed that level yet. Is there one other person want to volunteer? And I'm going to say not from Texas because we got 2 Texas perspectives. Anybody else?
This is Cindy. I'll go.
Okay, go ahead, Cindy.
So I think in our area, what we deal with many times is people want to be like in Scottsdale or downtown Phoenix until they realize if they go out to the suburbs, they might get a better value. And so part of our process here is showing them some of the things that they want that are closer in or in the cool area of town, and then taking them out and showing them the value. So it can take a little bit more time to actually get their vision and help them see if they drive another 15 minutes, um, how much more they can purchase. So part of the process is showing them areas in that case. And that's for out of state as well as in state. I'm working with a young couple right now that I put them in a townhouse a couple years ago, 4 years ago, and now they have a baby and they're trying to get a bigger house. So now they're looking in the suburbs, which a month ago they weren't wanting to look in the suburbs. But when they saw the cool house that they could get in the suburbs, all of a sudden they realized being closer to their mom and being in the suburbs was a good option. So,
And how many, just by show of hands, how many have their first communication with the client, the buyer, by phone, if that's the way you do it? And how many of us have like that first type of communication via a Zoom meeting?
oh, I like to do that. I like
So,
to do it. They don't always want to do it that way, but
so
I like
a
to do
couple of them that want, and how many still do it in person? So a couple, only a few. I would bet that if we were 20 years ago, Cindy, that it would have been 75% are doing it in person.
it.
Nobody,
Yes,
20
we
years ago,
were. And
nobody did it with Zoom because it wasn't invented yet.
all right.
And
Well, we did it in person, but then, we also presented offers in person, so,
so,
which I love to do.
so Cindy, if I meet somebody, let's say that I'm talking to somebody about, taking on a leadership role and becoming a team lead or an agent. If I talk to them on the phone, almost can never complete a transaction. If I do it on Zoom, it's very difficult. If I meet in person, it kind of it accelerates whether or not we're a good fit, right? We kind of know early
Yeah,
on it's not going to work or it's going to work.
right.
The industry's moved away from that in-person meeting, and I think what it's taken away is it's taken away like part of the predictable, structured buyer experience. Okay, in other words, if somebody lists a house and you're confident in what you're doing, you can tell them based upon how you position it and how, um, you know, what the absorption rate is and all of those statistics, how long it will likely to take them to sell their house, right? Based upon what they do.
Hmm.
I feel like buyers often they don't know whether they want to be in Phoenix or they want to be in a suburb of Phoenix, right? And that's part of the value that we bring. But when we meet them at houses and we never have these conversations, it's kind of like we're moving towards a door opener as opposed to a trusted advisor,
Hmm.
right? And
Agreed. Yeah.
the trusted advisor that I'm talking about not only is somebody who knows what they're doing, but who also establishes the cadence for the whole process, right? Because a lot of times people think, oh, I'd love to buy a house, but I hope I can find one. Like there's this mythical period where the perfect house is available and it might not be for you. But if you're realistic, like, similar houses come on all the time and it shouldn't be dependent upon whether you can find the right one. It's about setting expectations and dictating the process so that the buyer knows that the outcome is nearly certain, right? I mean, if I list my house with you, Cindy, you give me the statistics, I'm reasonable. You can probably predict within a matter of 2 weeks and a couple of percentage points what it's going to sell for. I want to
Right.
provide that same clarity when we work with buyers.
Hmm.
And the structure of the way buyers now feel empowered, where they don't share with us what they used to share, is something that limits our ability to provide a predictable, structured buyer experience that's extremely positive. I remember as a observer, probably 30 years ago, I used to do these home buyer events, and people would talk to the agents afterwards. And sometimes agents would make assumptions, but when they talk in person, you can clearly, make adjustments, and also, sometimes what they think is not what they buy. So you can read them and ask them questions. Like you mentioned that, do you need to be in Phoenix, or would this be something that would be available for you? One of the things that I never forgot was, they assumed, this agent who's very good assumed that, the buyer wanted to be really close to work. And then after presenting all these properties, right, the buyer said, you know what, Joan, I really need to be 15 to 20 minutes away from where I work. A, because I don't want to be so close. And B, I need like a 15-minute ride to just get my head out of work and come home with a fresh mind. And I never forgot that, because I'm like, we think like, oh, you're only 5 minutes from your office. Well, not everybody wants to be 5 minutes from their office, right? So
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
where the assumptions kind of go awry. And I think having that conversation, and I would also suggest that you print up this week's attachment, because providing a predictable, structured buyer experience is really powerful. Maybe at the onset, we kind of give them a piece of paper, which is a timeline of what they can expect, right? Because nobody's doing that anymore. We explain what happens at every step. We set the mutual expectations, like, hey, and I think Robert Garver is great at this, because you used to say, Robert, if you call me after 7, I'll get back to you tomorrow because I turned my phone off, right?
That's
You
correct.
created boundaries during your career. So if I was a consumer or a client of yours and I called at 7:30, I understand that I'm going to get a call back tomorrow. I'm not going to be worried about it. So that's part of what happens next at every step. Set expectations and provide a timeline. Hey, here's the process for the buying process. Here's once you go under contract, so that it's demystified. If they feel more comfortable with it, they're going to be more reasonable throughout the process. Okay. Um, and I put down here, structure equals trust. Does that resonate with anybody? The fact that there's a process and that process gets you to the outcome, that builds trust. And it takes us away from the opening the door. Brian?
I want to touch base with you. So when I click on the meeting notes link, it still has the PDF from the drivers that impact affordability from last week.
I'll have to fix that. I'm sorry about that. So I will, I'll, let me see if I can put it on there now. I'll see if I can do that before we finish up. And then if not, I'll send an email out, or what I'll do, I'll put it in the link here now for everybody.
Yeah, 'cause then I can pull it and print it right now.
Yep, I'll do that right now. And while I'm doing that, the second part is kind of a sub, which is certainty. Okay, if your child, your best friend was looking to buy a house, how certain would you be that, if they were realistic, that they'd be able to complete the process in the time frame allotted? I think for most of us, it would be like a 99.9%. And I think for, 1 second. I think for people that we just meet, especially if they walk through an open house, we got them from Zillow. They inquired about one of our listings. We don't really have that relationship. There, you want to make sure that one works, Brian, and then we'll move off of it. No surprises. And here's where I think we really, really miss the target, especially when we don't meet with people.
Rob, it says we have to have access approved.
Okay.
Yeah, I've tried to refresh my screen and I'm still pulling up the drivers that impact affordability.
All right. I think I'm getting it right now. That link might work, or
It works.
Okay. So, how about data-driven guidance? Okay, if I was out looking at properties in your backyard, your neighborhood, in a certain price range, I'd want to know if the best properties are selling in 5 to 11 days or 5 to 9 days. 35% of the listings are selling in that time frame, so that if there's one that comes on, I'm not uncomfortable when Vicky tells me that, look, it's been on the market for 3 days, it might get snapped up in the next 2 to 7 days. If you're interested, let's talk about how we make an offer that makes sense for you. Correct? And I think the industry did a tremendous pivot during the COVID time when people would look at properties, they knew they probably need to make an offer the same day, right? In your market, did clients come back and say, I've pivoted to the understanding that I need to make an offer if I'm interested, like immediately. I don't have the privilege of going home and thinking about it for 24 hours because it'll be gone. And if they did it, they'll do it once and then they'll change and say the next time they'll be prepared to make a decision on the spot. And did people still transact and do a lot of business? Hell yeah. So that was part of the communication. And this is the data-driven guidance.
Decide to go, 10, 20, $30,000 over the asking price.
Because you set the stage, right? Now, I think, markets are becoming more balanced. And I think, Fran, if you were to go and say, hey, if it's a fresh on the market property, it's likely selling for between 99 and 102% of the original ask price. And here's where I think a lot of agents miss a tremendous opportunity, which your competition is almost certainly not going to do, is, hey, on the properties that you like, what I can do is I can do a more in-depth analysis, which includes investigating how Eric Pruitt's listings sell compared to how Brian Neugebauer's listings sell, right? Because if one agent typically sells their listings 2 to 3% below ask price and another one's typically selling it at 2 to 3% above, do you think a buyer would appreciate knowing that? And do you think that if Eric or Brian's listings performed a certain way the last 5 times, that there's a high probability that this listing will perform that way?
Yes, it tells them, it explains to them how the agent is with their pricing and everything else. So it's valuable.
Right. And, they might not even, the agent might be a poor negotiator too, right? And Fran, if I'm representing you, would it be helpful if you knew if an agent was a better or poorer negotiator so you can decide how much you need to pay to secure the house without overpaying?
Absolutely.
So like this one thing alone, does anybody on the call regularly do that?
Yeah, Rob,
Go ahead, Robert.
I had an experience once with a listing agent who I knew very well, and I knew that she was all about just getting the deal done. And I showed one of her listings, and she called me immediately and asked me what my clients were going to do. And I said, well, I don't think they're going to do anything because they feel the price is too high. And on the spot, she said to me, well, would it help if I could get a price reduction? I said, sure. So she said, all right, I'll call you right back. She called me back in like 5 minutes and told me there was now a price reduction on the house. And I said, well, that's great, but I still think that it's still too high. She said, give me a number, I'll make it work.
All right, so the agent negotiated against themselves.
Exactly. And knowing that, I felt comfortable in guiding her to where we wanted the price to be, and that's where we ended up buying the house.
So Robert, this is not directly related to this, but I really feel compelled to share this. It's hard to believe this, but one agent, very talented agent in our company, had a seller that was refusing to lower the price. And they tried to show him that, hey, you're paying taxes, association, house is vacant, all the costs. They said, no, I don't want to lower the price. And we had a really good discussion. And I said, next time there's a showing that's scheduled, I want you to call the seller up and just ask them this question. Hey, Robert, what would happen if we had an offer for, $390 on your $440,000 home? What would you do? And the homeowner said, well, if I counter it at 410, do you think I could not include the furniture like on the listing? So at least like having that different perspective opened up the dialogue, right? So anyway, I'm not sure how that's directly related to this, but I just think it's another tool that you could use to, when you keep asking the same question, it doesn't work.
So Rob,
So,
I can share something that we're doing that's really working.
wait, before you say
Oh,
that, I want to no, before you say that, I want to introduce Patrick Stracuzzi, from our newest, actually as of Sunday, you'll be on the team Remax Select Group, and you've been with Remax for how many years, Patrick?
on and off 35.
35 years, and
I
very
left it.
accomplished in the Martin County, Stewart, Port St. Lucie area. So, if you have any referrals, now you can go, Patrick.
So one of the things that's been working, our market is really driven by inventory and supply because there's not a whole lot of inventory, but each property seems to have a USP, and a USP is known as unique selling proposition. So this cottage, it's 1,400 square feet, block fisherman's cottage that I'm working on right now. There's a marina for $1,000. You keep a boat there. It's solid concrete block. It has lots of updates, and it's 459,888. And everything around it is multi-million dollars. I even told the guy, if you could wait 60 days, I'll buy it. And he goes, no, I want to sell it right now. So what I'm doing is Lisa is next to me that you can't see her right there.
Hello.
And Lisa, I call her my big sister because she's older than me, just by a couple of months.
Days.
So what I have her do, it's very presumptive, but we have these nice, they look like this. Here it is. Here's one right here. And it's it's a booklet, got the name on it. And it's inside it, we put an MLS sheet. This one has a picture of a boat for the marina. It has a seller's disclosure statement in there. And then I have Lisa type the contract up. Everything but the buyer's name and the price and terms. It's already typed up. There's two of them in there. So when I go there, I meet with the other realtor. I walk the property that like they did down to the marina. The seller's there. He's a great guy. He built the docks, all about the house. And now all she has to do is write the contract. Somebody slowly drove by the house while I'm showing it because yesterday he was the buyer. Army veteran, Afghanistan, retired, really wants the home, flew in from Georgia. So Lisa gave me that packet again with the contract. I met him there. I sat down with the sellers and I ended up doing a reverse contract in front of them where the sellers signed the contract and we gave it back to them. Because a new roof is $11,000, we took that off the price, came down even a little bit more. Seller signed it and I handed it to the buyer. He wants it more than life himself. He drove by it while I was just showing it. But by handing the people the contracts, or call it paperwork, like people don't like hearing a contract, but here's the paperwork. Here's the agreement. All you have to do is put your buyer's names there and put the price and get on first base. And that's the script and dialogue to use.
So Patrick,
I strongly recommend to get on first base, and this is working.
So Patrick, you triggered two things for me. Number one is I know many of you do this, but maybe not all of you. But maybe when you work with a buyer, make sure that you send them the contract and offer to review it with them. Say, when you find the property, here's what we're going to fill out, right? Because it takes resistance out of the transaction. Okay. And I'm gonna just ask you for one more quick question, Patrick, which is, can you share the line about value, price and value? And I want everybody to listen to how you don't even need to think about it. Go ahead, Patrick.
So distant communications, you memorize this, it overcomes anything such as commissions or whatever. Happiness in a cheap price is always lost in the bitterness of poor quality. You get what you pay for.
Happiness at a cheap price is always lost in the bitterness of poor quality. I love it.
Happiness in a cheap price is always lost in the bitterness of poor quality.
So thank you. I forgot about, just getting them familiar with the contract so that it brings down another level of resistance from the entire process. And
They're actually sitting right there in the living room and they fill the contract out.
Right. And calling it paperwork instead of a contract, some people, their body language changes when you talk about a contract, right?
And then this is beautiful. Tim Allen taught me this. Tim is no longer with us. He was in Naperville, Illinois. But I have a listing appointment at 1 o'clock. I tell them what I want. It's all in here. So I don't have to do this paperwork. I don't mean to say anybody can do it, but it was a team of getting it done of what I want to look at, which is more inventory, because we're in an inventory market, Cabbage Patch Dolls and Beanie Babies. If there's only one, you can ask more money and these cash buyers are buying it here. But this listing is already filled out that it's a one-stop shop, meaning I go there, and Eric Pruitt taught me this.
Get it signed.
Get it signed. And you bring
So Lisa, can you do me a huge favor and put that saying that Patrick just gave us in the chat? People are asking for it. And I'm gonna mute everybody. Just unmute yourself when you talk.
Rob, I got one question for Pat.
Yeah, if you can unmute yourself, Eric, and then ask it. Go ahead.
Hey, Patrick, do you put those contract folders in every listing? What if you don't accompany a listing, if it's a vacant listing? That would be a good idea to put that in even vacant homes, have the contract already filled out for the buyers. Give Lisa lots of work.
Lisa, can you unmute yourself? And I know that almost everybody uses electronic ones, but I think psychologically it's pretty powerful.
I physically hand them the contract right when I accompany the showing. Give it to the realtor, you give it to the realtor. So the job is done. They literally sat on the back patio and write the contract and hand it to me. I go out in the back porch and bada bing, boom, it's pending.
Well, it's less intimidating.
Yeah, I even tell the sellers be there because I'm pricing things where it's going to sell and there's no inventory in my marketplace.
Right. And Patrick, I know in Florida, people even look at like price per square foot a little bit more than they do in other areas.
Supply and demand right now.
But you can put a lot of data in there that will lead somebody to making an offer saying, hey, look at, the last 10 properties sold for, $439 a square foot. This one's asking $455. If you were to make an offer, what price would, you could ask it several different ways to get to that same outcome. And I just want to open up your mind. And I want to say, I know I've seen a lot of you or your team members here that have been working with buyers and they haven't completed a transaction with us. And we feel like they might not be, realistic buyers. And many times that's on us. Go ahead, Patrick.
So basically, everything that I know or what I've learned is from what smarter people taught me, the best in the industry. It's basically a script and a dialogue that makes sense. This life that we're living right now, this moment, it's our life. We write the story. We're the actor, we're the director, we're the producer. It's up to us how life is going to turn out. And you have to have passion. It has to be authentic in communication. But it's a script and a dialogue like you're in a play every day. And today, the piece of real estate, you can use this. This is like a piece of boardwalk or park place in the game of Monopoly. And when you land on that piece, what do? You buy it and you always win. This is a multi-million-dollar neighborhood. Those are $3 million houses. You show the whole thing and you say, script and dialogue, I strongly recommend to get on first base. It's body language. And when you tell them this, you touch them right there. And there's a scientific study. It goes in their head. And you just say, and I strongly recommend to get on first base, and you release. Don't do it during COVID, but I'm telling you, it works. It works every time.
You have to know
studies.
But you have to don't wing it. You have to be like appropriate and
Yes.
understand. Patrick, I would ask you two more questions. What's the number in the past 3 years? What's the highest number of listings and sales that you did in a year? Was
We
it
did over
40, 50?
600 sales in 1 year.
So you did, this is somebody that he's not just talking, he makes a lot of sense. And then how do you get listings now? Do they all just come to you or do you actively prospect?
I actively prospect. Susie, come here, sweetheart. Susie's
And
tough. See, Susie, come here. She does multiple things. She's our director of first impressions.
Hi, guys.
She's filing. She's the one who worries because I don't worry. So
and how many listings have you taken in the last 30 days?
30 days. We said about
2 weeks.
yeah, last 2 weeks.
In the
last 2 weeks,
Probably we're hitting. We
10.
got 3 more I haven't registered.
about 10.
13.
10
13.
13 in 2 weeks. All right. So Patrick, I have 2.5
Are you
pages
ready?
of my
Really
sheet here,
quick.
but
Ring. You're an expired.
Hello?
Just role play.
Yep.
Oh, is this Robert?
Yep.
Robert, I'm calling about your home that I saw come off the market. And I wondered, did you sell it or is it still available?
No, we took it off the market.
Now, most people say it's still available.
Okay, it was still available.
And then you repeat, so it's still available. And you say,
yep.
Yes. That's the purpose of my call. I specialize in homes that don't sell the first time. I am the top selling realtor in the area. I'd like to pop over and see your home. And I was wondering, would today be good or tomorrow?
Actually, today would be better. I'm going out of town.
Morning or afternoon?
Late afternoon.
How about 3 or 4?
4.
I can't wait to see you, and thank you so much.
So Patrick's last name is Stracuzzi.
Those are all scripts and dialogues. Everything I just did.
Right. So the reason, and Patrick loves to share information, but the thing I wanted to share with everybody here is that if you had a year you did 600 units, many people would say, well, geez, that guy doesn't have to prospect anymore.
Oh,
well,
I
you know what?
have to.
It's because he keeps his eye on the ball. So I have like 2.5 sheets to go, Patrick. So I got to keep rolling, but we'll be looking forward to seeing you share information with this fantastic group here. Certainty is the buyer never feels lost. Okay. Sometimes when you're saying that the buyer is not committed, the buyer this, the buyer that, I hate to break it to you, but more times than not, it's something that we're doing. Okay. It's 98% on us, not the buyer. Like the buyer's not making reasonable offers. The buyer's not motivated. The buyer, this, that. Maybe we didn't set the stage correctly. We didn't set the right expectations. Usually it's something that we did. Sometimes we invited a buyer that's not qualified, and I don't mean financially, but motivation wise qualified, and then they burn us up. Structure is, gives the buyer feels guided and not drifting. Okay. They feel like they know where they're going, right? If I'm, driving around without a GPS, I don't know if I'm going to get to my destination. But if I have a structure and I know that if I hit traffic, the system will reroute me to my destination, that's what we need to give. It's not random. It's not like, hey, if I'm in the car with, Cindy Reddy, that it's a possibility, or Cindy, that I might not get a home purchased. Like that just doesn't happen. If Cindy has a qualified, motivated buyer, she'd be like, well, how could they not buy? Of course they're going to buy, right? Because you know the process, right? You hit traffic this morning on the 101. So if the traffic stopped, you'd get off there and you go back way to get here, right? You would not show up. And that's what we need to look at when we do our transactions. Buyers don't recognize the value of advocacy and what we do, right? And teaching them how we negotiate on their behalf, knowing that the habits of others to prevent them from overpaying. These conversations, folks, do not happen. People don't they just assume that, oh, you know, tell me what offer you want to make, and a bipod. Tell me what offer you want to make. I can't tell you. Like, we need to guide them on how to get to the outcome that they want to have, right? The simple formula: certainty, telling them what's happening; structure, show them the plan; advocacy, protect their interests, right? And there are what I'll call either unskilled or desperate people in this business that sometimes will just try to force a transaction. And in my history, most of the time, that's a waste of time, because somewhere along the line, the transaction will fall apart. They'll switch agents, and all that time was wasted. You probably have seen that on the when you're a listing agent and you're like, get a bad vibe for a transaction, and you're like, I knew I should have trusted my gut. So when we're an advocate, we need to let them know that we're an advocate, right? Show them what we do. When agents deliver, all three buyers feel safe. It's not a matter of if this is going to happen. It's just a matter of which property and when. I think most of us do an outstanding job at mastering the local inventory. We might be able to do a little better job at knowing the statistics, but by and large, especially the team here at Remax, we know what's happening in our backyard. But there's the story about knowledge. Most agents know what's going on. Okay. The better agents understand what's happening, and the best agents can explain and teach it. I want to let that sink in for a second. Most agents know what's going on. Most agents know the inventory. Most agents know if it's a buyer's or seller's market, right? The better agents understand it, right? And if you understand it, but you can't get that message to your client, that's incredibly frustrating, right? Because I understand what's going on, but my client continues to do the wrong thing. That means I'm not able to explain and teach it. And whose fault is that? That's our fault. We can't blame the client. That's truly our fault. So knowing, understanding, teaching, and explaining, those are the three levels. And almost everybody on this call certainly knows their local market. Almost everybody understands it, but the air gets a little thinner when it comes to explaining and teaching it. Okay, so I would make a mental note to try to improve how we can convey that information that we know to our clients. It's like when you take an overpriced listing, you know it's going to sit. Well, the only reason why somebody would ask you to take that overpriced listing is because we haven't done a good job of explaining to them how that's not in their best interest, right? Because if we explain to them how that's not in their best interest, they will take the correct action. Okay, they will tell you that I want to go in at the lower price. Master local inventory, track days on market, know that cold, explain it to the clients. Most of us are experts at knowing school ratings, commute time, HOA rules, things going on in the community. I think we're all great at that, but don't forget that we need to have a process of making sure we check those boxes every time. Look at the micro market comparison, because all real estate is local. For example, maybe if it's an older condo, in Florida, you might have a different market than if it's a property in Port St. Lucie, a really hot market, a really hot area with a single family. Lead a true buyer consultation, not a casual chat. Many of us feel like if it's a prior former client that we've worked with, we feel comfortable that we maybe skip steps. Does anybody feel, by raising your hand, that maybe you're too comfortable sometimes and you maybe skip steps, and they might not remember what the whole process is from the last time? I would recommend having a more structured approach, having a true consultation. And it's hard to have a true consultation when you meet them at the first house and then you show them 5 houses, then you leave. Okay. A true consultation is truly going through the numbers. And the buyer education event that we're doing for the Keys at 33, the Paris Challenge, We talk about a lot of things that benefit, and we should know all these numbers. We should know the cost of waiting, right? If you're working with a buyer and you don't ask this one question, hey, Anna, do you know what the difference in net worth between your peers that are homeowners and your peers that are renters is, right? You should ask that question. Anna Bipod, are you somewhere where you can unmute yourself?
Yeah.
All right. So if you ask that question every time, and then instead of telling them what it is, ask them to look it up. Say, hey, can you look that up quickly? I know what it is. I just want to make sure that I'm got the most current stat. You look it up, they're like, oh my God, it's 43 times, right? That has a much more powerful impact than telling them that it's 43 times. I mean, most of the time you'll see the emotion and the amazement when they come up with that number. Educating buyers on the home itself, this gives me a little pause because I don't need to be a home inspector, but I do think that, more than just saying this is the kitchen, the bathroom, that there are other things that we can do. For example, in Florida, Patrick brought out that, hey, this needs a new roof. We're already providing a credit for it. This has wind mitigation, impact windows. Do you know, Anna, how much that will save you in insurance by having a new roof and impact windows? Ask that to your client and say, look, at the last property I did, the insurance was $14,000, but then when they bought a newer one with wind mitigation, it was only $3,900.
So Rob,
Right.
I accompanied one today. When I got there, Lisa typed up the contract already for me. I had the seller's disclosure statement in the envelope, then the showing sheet. I handed that to the agent and hung out with them emotionally walking around the property. I guarantee they're going to write a contract on it. But I also knew that the roof was going to be 11,000, as well as talking to the insurance guy would be $4,300 for the year for insurance. So that way, everything's done. Here you go. And tell them I strongly recommend to get on first base. You will watch, it's going to be the most dynamic year I've ever had in my life. Traffic is beautiful. It is so beautiful. There's so much traffic. People are here, but I think that today you just have to give it to them like that on a silver platter and to spend a little bit of time to accompany the showings. Your sales are going to go like crazy. It depends on your market.
So folks like Patrick and I, we don't invest our career contingent upon what the market does. In other words, if Patrick is in the right mind space, he's going to do 400 to 600 units a year if that's what he wants to do. It doesn't depend if the market's hot or the market's cold. There's always transactions, and the fringe players disappear when the market gets hard. Okay.
Now, one last thing, if I can interrupt, because this is great. So Eric have worked on this, the word possibility, that anything in life is possible. For example, Rob doesn't even know the transaction that I have him involved in right now. No, I'm serious, Rob, you don't. No, but I've already agreed to this. Okay. But the vision I have for something I'm creating with Rob, I've already committed us to it, but it's fantastic. So it's not doing anything for money. It's doing something that when you have an idea, you act on it. Don't wait.
So now I'm curious, Patrick, but we'll talk off.
You really want to know transparently?
No, just a little accident.
So I got a page, like almost a page and a half left to go. But here, prepare buyers.
Wait to tell you. You got to get back with me.
I will prepare buyers for the market conditions. Okay. We should explain offer strategies, right? Assuming, or I don't even want to say assuming, knowing that we're going to get to this point, right? Most of us don't know we're getting to that point, right? We could talk about the different things that are there, inspection issues, right? 3 years ago, you weren't getting inspection options, right? Now you generally can. This is not generally an issue now, but you can talk about, hey, if there's an appraisal gap, how are we going to handle that? Probably escalation clauses aren't used much, but a lot of things that we can talk about. We can incorporate sharing with a buyer that, hey, if we see 3 properties, one's on the market 2 days, one's on the market, 2.5 weeks, one's on the market 2.5 months, would it be helpful if I shared with you how other homes in those similar circumstances had fared so that you can make the optimal pricing decision when you make your offer? Most people would say yes. I'm going to share with you the days on market impact. We're going to share with you the listing agent performance. We're going to talk about market trends, provide a sample offer package, which Patrick talked about. We're going to show buyers how to win without overpaying. We're going to run comps with context, right? The comps with context means this house was updated, wind mitigation, new roof. This house was didn't have impact windows, and the roof only has 5 years left. Okay. Confidence comes from preparation. Confidence comes from preparation. Improve the showing experience. Okay. Small details create a premium feel. You can create like a packet tour for your listings. I don't know. Do many of us bring like electronic tape measures, flashlights, or anything anymore, or you use the listing? Some of us do.
I just bought one. Just to sometimes they want to take you around the house. So it's a form of mapping. You take all your notes and they're kind of impressed when you press the little button and the laser hits it. So as you're communicating, you're basically mapping, putting the square, the dimensions, there's circles, right. And you are actually taking the listing. It's a presumptive. When you leave, your listing is filled out and they have signed it. It's the only why you went over.
And they might be asking you, Patrick, I don't know if my bedroom furniture will fit here, right? You can take the measurements and then say, hey, when you go home, measure it, and then we'll see before we make the offer.
Yeah. Well, you can always get a new bedroom set, but you can't change the location. So,
yeah.
Hey, Rob, this is just a little bit off of what you're saying, but it came up yesterday. For those of us who are in the really cold areas of the country, carry a lighter or something with you that when you open a lockbox, the key most certainly will be frozen inside the box. And you need to be able to warm it up to get the key out.
Yeah.
Knowing your local area and your challenges. So this is a Tom Toole rewrite of something that I did. Most people, if you give something a rating, right, it's like, hey, out of 1 to 5, where does it come in? Or out of 1 to 10, where does it come in? Tom Toole talks about this with his team. He's a Remax broker in mainline Pennsylvania. And I'm sure he probably borrowed it from somebody, but I'm giving Tom credit. We're going to have a 7-point ranking system. And I just want you to think about it. Anything between 5 and 7 is offer territory. Okay, so then when somebody ranks stuff, if it comes in at a 6, we're going to go back and say, all right, let's talk about where do we come in for an offer on this one. Okay, I think it's it's not trickery, but it's a psychological way to get people to take the right action for their own best interest. And number 7 is, perfect score is this is the one, 6 the top contender, 5 is a solid option, 4 is, hey, that's nice, but it's not compelling for me. 3 is probably not. 2 is doesn't fit our needs, and 1 is absolutely not. It would be helpful to have all these. Create a top 5 for the homes that you sold that you saw at the end of the day.
And it's going to get really clean.
This makes buyers feel guided, not left alone to interpret all the data on their own. Communicate like a pro. Okay. Set expectations on how you're going to do follow-up. When we do listings, do many of us have a particular day of the week where you give feedback, or you do give feedback immediately, or do you ask how they want to be communicated with? Just one volunteer to tell me what you do.
Usually feedback is per showing. If there's many, then feedback is sent out for like, so maybe like at the end of the day or the following morning, giving them enough
Okay.
time to.
Brenda, do you do feedback after every showing, or do you have a conversation with them once a week when you have a listing? What's the cadence that you use?
On my listing, I usually do Fridays. We have a appointment system that the other agent does feedback, but usually I try to give them a feedback of what I think, what the market is doing. I do my own feedback every Friday
So
on my
you do
own listings.
so you do it on Fridays, and I think that's great because the customer knows what to expect. I think we need to set that same cadence when we work with buyers. For some reason, we feel, buyers are a different random event. Okay, it's a different experience, but communicating, setting, here's what to expect, right? Immediate updates after offers, like, hey, sometimes you present an offer and you get feedback immediately. Sometimes it could be 24 to 48 hours it takes to hear back. Maybe the seller's, out of town, out of communication. Maybe they need to talk to brothers. There's a lot of anxiety when somebody makes an offer. Would you all agree? Like, what's going to happen? So setting that expectation, and it doesn't take that much, Vicky, to put a call in after you contact a listing agent and say, hey, when do you think we can hear back, right? And then share that with your customer. Don't leave them in anxiety. It lowers the transaction resistance. Proactive communication reduces anxiety, increases loyalty. Go ahead.
And I think that is something very important, especially with today buyers. We are so spoiled and used to the buyers, especially the ones that we have so many years in the industry, that they used to be so obedient to they used to listen to us, right? But the buyers today, especially the new generations, are so savvy, and many times they know as much or more about the industry and about the market than we know. Sometimes when they called us, they know more about that particular house or the particular area than we know. They have done the research, they are very savvy, and we need to be a step ahead of them. When they called us and they want to go and see the house, it's not like we can just show up to go and look at the house. We need to be a step ahead because they're gonna cut us on with a curveball, and we're gonna look pretty stupid not knowing what they already know. And that's the kind of buyer that we have nowadays. So so we need to be very prepared with today's buyers.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Julie Kirkowitz from St. Louis had said that she tries to deliver what the customer wants. And Julie, are you somewhere where you can unmute yourself? Because I want to ask you a quick question.
Hi, Rob. Of course.
So when you do that, if you're balancing, 10 clients, you need to be extremely organized. Otherwise, you might be over communicating with some people. You might not be delivering what you committed to. So I would say, when you make those, hey, I deliver it your way type of expectation and your business grows, you need to be extremely well organized. And if you're not, what you're going to do is you're going to misfit the expectations that your clients have. Some clients get annoyed by over communication. Like for me as a customer, I don't only want to know if there's something that I need to take action on, right? If I don't need to take action, maybe you can update me once a week. And other people have anxiety if they don't get feedback. So knowing your customer, good communication is always, paramount to repeat business. And I don't know who I need to give credit to for this statement, but if we really do our job well, right? The best closing gift is a job well done. Okay. And if you do an exceptional job, I know many of you have gotten gifts from your clients, correct? And to me, that is what I would worry about is delivering that experience through the process, a truly referable experience. And not because you're trying to make it referable, because you're trying to get more leads, but because you're trying to figure out how to service the customer and set the right expectations. Okay. So I hope this is valuable. I have a request for everybody. You all have peers in your market that probably aren't on this call. I am going to double down my effort to make next week's incredibly valuable. And I'm going to tell you a secret. I don't know what the topic's going to be yet, but I want you to trust me. And I want you to ask two peers that that aren't on this call if they could participate, and then say, I just want to know what give me your feedback. Is it worth it or not? Because I want to figure out how I can deliver more value, because the collective knowledge from everybody on this group, if we could just get 1% from 100 people, that would double our resources. Okay. And most everything that I got, except for maybe some of the, studying numbers, I've learned from people on this call. Okay. And my mission is to share it, and to share it so that we can deliver a better client experience, a more referable client experience, so that we all can have an abundant life not by figuring out how to shortcut getting transactions done, but how to manage transactions through better communication and earn what we're worth, because we are not overpaid. We just sometimes are undervalued, and usually that comes from setting the expectation and communicating. All right. So I appreciate everybody here. We have a strong number here. I think we're close to 100. We're still at 80 people. Please, invite two people that are in your market, friends, even if they're not with our company. You can even invite them if they're in the business. And I just want to help elevate your game and give you some more tools and resources. All right. In the Northeast and Midwest, stay warm, and everybody have a great, safe weekend. All right.
Thank you.
Bye,
Yes, and
everybody.
if any of your clients would like to move to Florida, it's snowing, inches up there. Just reach out to me.
Thanks,
I'm
Rob.
in
Got it.
Celebration.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
And we have
Bye-bye.
beautiful sunshine and 78 in Arizona.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Thanks,
It's really
everybody.
nice here too. It's in the 60s, heading 70s.
Bye.
Have a great
Bye.